Dear INFJ, this video is a lifelong tension between what your soul instinctively perceives and what the world stubbornly normalizes, and that tension has shaped every room you have ever walked into, every relationship you have ever given yourself to, and every moment you have ever quietly pulled back wondering why human behavior so often makes no sense to you at all. This is a deep dive into the 10 human behaviors INFJs never understand, and by never, I don't mean you are incapable of grasping the logic of them on an intellectual level, because you can, and you often do better than most, but I mean that on the deepest, most intuitive level, these behaviors will always feel foreign to you, unnatural, confusing, and sometimes even painful, because they clash with your core values, your wiring, your spiritual depth, and your relentless yearning for authenticity in a world that often celebrates the opposite. So sit back, INFJ, and let me walk with you through these 10 behaviors, not to condemn the world but to validate you, to hold up a mirror so you see clearly why you have always felt a step out of sync, and why that feeling is not a flaw, but rather the undeniable evidence that you were made to perceive the hidden truths others ignore. 1. Superficial small talk. There is something that INFJs will never truly understand no matter how many times they practice, no matter how many times they force a polite smile, and that is the phenomenon of small talk, because to most people it is simply harmless, a social lubricant, an easy way to connect without diving too deep, but to you, INFJ, it feels like drowning in shallow water where you can't swim forward into meaning, nor can you retreat into silence without being judged, so you are trapped in a performance that empties you with every forced laugh and every meaningless exchange. When people talk about the weather for 10 minutes, or about a sale at the grocery store, or gossip about a coworker's hairstyle, you can play along on the surface, but deep inside your mind you're screaming for air, because you crave conversations about what keeps people awake at night, what breaks their heart, what they secretly dream of becoming, and why they believe the things they believe, yet instead you are served an endless buffet of empty calories and asked to pretend it nourishes you. You don't judge others for needing small talk, but you never understand how they can be satisfied with it, how they can feel socially fulfilled by it, how they can walk away from it smiling as if a bond was formed, when to you it feels like a hollow ritual that distracts from the real connections your soul is starving for. 2. Chasing status and image. INFJs never understand why so many people obsess over status, image, and surface-level approval, because to you, the worth of a person has nothing to do with what they wear, how many followers they have, or how loudly they can flaunt their achievements, but everything to do with their integrity, their kindness when no one is watching, their ability to live aligned with truth even when it costs them everything. You watch people claw their way up social ladders, spending their lives curating appearances, sacrificing authenticity for the approval of strangers, and it confuses you, not because you don't intellectually get it. You know it's about insecurity, about validation, about ego, but because you cannot comprehend how someone could feel fulfilled living like that, because to you the idea of being admired for a mask is worse than being ignored for your real self. This is why you often find yourself alienated in environments that thrive on competition and hierarchy, because you cannot force yourself to play a game where the winner is the best pretender, and so you quietly step back, not out of weakness, but because you cannot betray your own soul for the sake of being seen. 3. Enjoying conflict and drama. INFJs never understand why so many people seem to enjoy conflict, gossip, and drama, because to you, these things feel like poison in the air, draining the energy of everyone present, and yet you watch others lean in, entertained, fueled, even bonded by the chaos. When two people fight, your instinct is to step into their shoes, to understand the root, to de-escalate, to restore peace. But others often thrive on the fight, spinning stories, taking sides, escalating instead of soothing, and you never understand how their hearts don't ache the way yours does in the presence of division. You know that some people feed off the adrenaline of conflict because it gives them a sense of significance, but your soul recoils, because conflict to you is not entertainment but unnecessary suffering, and gossip is not bonding but betrayal disguised as connection, and drama is not life but distraction from truth. 4. Ignoring emotional depth. INFJs will never understand how people can ignore their own emotions, suppress them, dismiss them, or pretend they don't matter, because to you, emotions are the language of the soul, the deepest compass of human experience, the raw data of authenticity, and when people bury them, it feels like they are burying themselves alive. You meet people who laugh when they want to cry, who shrug when they want to scream, who distract themselves instead of healing, who run from the very feelings that could set them free, and you stand there unable to fathom how they can live like that, because for you, facing emotions is painful, yes, but denying them feels unbearable, like cutting yourself off from the truth of existence. This is why you often feel like you see more in people than they want to see in themselves, because their emotions speak louder to you than their words, and you will never understand how they can ignore what is so loud, so present, so obviously calling them to transformation. 5. Cruelty for the sake of power. INFJs never understand cruelty, and not just obvious cruelty like violence or abuse, but subtle cruelty, the everyday power plays where someone puts another down just to feel taller, where someone mocks vulnerability just to protect their own fear, where someone exploits kindness because they mistake it for weakness. You watch this and you don't just feel confusion, you feel rage wrapped in sorrow, because you can't comprehend how someone could take joy in another's pain, or how dominance could feel more rewarding than empathy, or how making someone small could ever feel like real strength. This is one of the reasons INFJs struggle in environments filled with toxic authority, because you will never understand how cruelty sustains itself, how others can accept it, laugh along with it, normalize it, while every fiber of your being screams that this is wrong, that this is destructive, that this is not how human beings are meant to treat each other. 6. Inconsistency between words and actions. INFJs never understand people who say one thing and do another, who preach values but live contradictions, who promise love but deliver neglect, who talk of loyalty but disappear at the first sign of difficulty. Because to you, words are sacred, promises are bonds, values are meant to be embodied, and when people use language as decoration instead of truth, it feels like a betrayal not only of you but of reality itself. You often catch these inconsistencies faster than anyone else, because your intuition picks up on the gaps between what is said and what is lived, and while others may accept excuses or look the other way, you cannot, because you will never understand how someone can live in such dissonance without suffocating under the weight of their own dishonesty. 7. The fear of solitude. INFJs never understand why so many people fear solitude as if it were a disease, filling every moment with noise, distraction, or company, terrified of being alone with their own thoughts, when for you, solitude is not just peace but survival, the place where you recharge, reconnect, and remember who you are. You see people who rush from one social event to another, one relationship to another, one screen to another, desperate to escape silence, and you wonder how they can be so afraid of their own company, when to you, solitude is where the deepest truths reveal themselves, where your intuition sharpens, where your spirit breathes. You will never understand how others can resist the gift of solitude, because while you know too much isolation can be heavy, the absence of it feels far worse, and so you often quietly retreat, baffled by the world's allergy to stillness. 8. The obsession with control. INFJs never understand why people are so obsessed with controlling everything, controlling outcomes, controlling others, controlling appearances, because to you, life is not about domination but about flow, about alignment, about surrender to what is true rather than force against it. You watch people manipulate, scheme, strategize endlessly just to maintain a fragile illusion of certainty, and it confuses you, because you know that control is not real, that it always slips through fingers eventually, and that clinging only creates suffering. Your way has always been different, not passive, not careless, but guided by intuition, by the quiet voice within that trusts timing, trusts patterns, trusts that truth always wins in the end, and so you will never fully understand how others can exhaust themselves trying to bend the universe to their will. 9. Indifference to injustice. INFJs never understand how people can witness injustice and do nothing, how they can scroll past suffering, laugh off cruelty, normalize oppression, and go on with their lives untouched, because to you, injustice is not an abstract concept but a wound in the collective soul, and every fiber of your being aches when you see it ignored. You know you cannot fix everything, but you also know silence makes you complicit, and so you carry a weight most others don't, the weight of empathy for strangers, for causes, for stories that haunt you long after everyone else has moved on. You will never understand how others can be so numb, so indifferent, so comfortable in their bubbles, when to you, injustice is not something happening out there, but something happening to all of us, a shared fracture you cannot look away from. 10. The need to belong at any cost. Finally, INFJs never understand the human behavior of conforming at all costs, of sacrificing individuality just to belong, of silencing truth just to be accepted, because to you, belonging is meaningless if it requires self-betrayal, and authenticity will always matter more than approval. You watch people shrink themselves, laugh at jokes they don't find funny, agree with values they don't believe in, stay in groups that wound them, all for the comfort of belonging, and you cannot comprehend how that could ever feel worth it, because for you, belonging is only real when it honors your true self, and anything less feels like exile in disguise. This is why INFJs often walk alone, not because you don't crave connection. You crave it deeply, but because you refuse to pay the price of losing yourself just to gain a seat at the table. So INFJ, these are the 10 human behaviors you will never fully understand, not because you lack intelligence or awareness, but because your very wiring resists them, rejects them, recoils from them, and that resistance is not your flaw, but your gift. You were not built to thrive in a world of masks, cruelty, and superficiality. You were built to disrupt it with depth, compassion, and authenticity. And while you may never understand why the majority behaves this way, perhaps that is the point, because if you understood it too well, you might become it, and the world does not need more of the same. The world needs you, exactly as you are, confused by what is false but endlessly loyal to what is true.